You have a muscle that remembers fear, not a metaphor. Deep in your hips, running from the base of your spine to the top of your thigh bone, there is a single muscle unlike any other in your body. Long before you had words for what frightened you, this muscle was already responding. And it may still be holding the shape of every threat you never finished running from. Its name is the psoas, pronounced S-O-as. Most people go their entire lives without hearing it spoken aloud, let alone feeling where it lives. Here is what makes it strange among muscles. The psoas is the only muscle in your entire body that connects your spine directly to your legs. A single living cable joining two halves of you that every other muscle treats as separate. Every other muscle around your hips attaches bone to bone, close and local. Hip to thigh, thigh to knee. The psoas reaches further than any of them. It begins at the sides of your lower spine, threads down through the deep center of your torso, past the kidneys, through the pelvis, and fastens onto the inside of your upper thigh bone. When you lift your knee to climb a stair, or curl forward to rise out of bed, this is the muscle doing the quiet work, joining your upper and lower body into one continuous line. Anatomists sometimes call it the iliopsoas, since it works in close partnership with a neighboring muscle, the iliacus, both converging on the same tendon before crossing the front of the hip joint. Together, they are the primary hip flexor of the human body, and the muscle group responsible for lifting the thigh toward the torso with every single step you take. A person takes several thousand steps in an average day, and the iliopsoas fires with nearly every one of them, largely without ever entering conscious thought. But its deeper role is older than walking. When something threatens you, a sound in the dark, a sudden fall, a moment of real danger, your body does not wait for permission. It curls, the chin drops, the shoulders round, the knees draw in toward the chest. This is the startle reflex, the same protective posture seen across nearly every mammal, human or otherwise, and the psoas is one of its primary engines, pulling the torso and legs toward each other to shield the soft, vital organs at your center. For a single moment of danger, this is exactly what the muscle is built for. The trouble begins when the danger is no longer a single moment. The clinician Peter Levine, who founded a body of trauma-focused clinical work called Somatic experiencing, spent decades observing something simple in the natural world. Wild animals in the minutes after fleeing a predator visibly shake, a full-body tremor that seems to complete the fear response and discharge it from the nervous system. Then they return to grazing as though nothing happened at all. Humans, Levine observed, often skip this step. Cultural conditioning teaches you to hold still, to compose yourself, to move on without the shake, without the visible discharge. In a meeting, in traffic, in a hospital waiting room, the nervous system may fully mobilize for danger, and then be asked by circumstance and by manners to simply sit there. The charge has nowhere to go, and the muscles that contracted to protect you, the psoas chief among them, do not always register that the danger has passed. They stay braced, not consciously, not on purpose, simply held quietly, sometimes for years, waiting for a signal of safety that never fully arrives. This is not settled science with a single confirmed mechanism, and reputable somatic therapists are careful to say so. It remains, by their own description, a working clinical theory rather than a proven fact. But the underlying physiology is not in question. Chronic stress produces chronic muscular guarding, that much is well documented, and the psoas, sitting at the very center of the body's fight-or-flight architecture, is one of its most common addresses. Long before any of this had a clinical name, an entirely different tradition had already mapped fear onto the body. In the Huangdi Neijing, the Yellow Emperor's Inner Classic, a foundational text of Chinese medicine compiled more than 2,000 years ago, each major organ was understood to hold not only a physical function, but an emotional one. This was not a poetic flourish. It was treated as clinical fact, the basis for diagnosis and treatment across centuries of practice. Grief was said to live in the lungs, anger in the liver, joy in the heart, and fear, the text taught, lived in the kidneys. A physician trained in this tradition, presented with a patient gripped by chronic fear, would not think first of the mind. They would think of the kidneys, and whether they had a word for it or not, of the deep muscular territory wrapped immediately around them. Here is where the map converges. The kidneys sit deep in the back of the abdomen, wrapped almost directly against the psoas muscle itself, so closely that in the language of this older medicine, To speak of the kidneys was, in a physical sense, to speak of exactly the territory where the psoas lives. Two systems again, separated by 2,000 years and an ocean of difference in method, pointing toward the same quiet address in the body. It was a modern teacher, the author Liz Cook, who gave this muscle the name that has since spread through yoga studios and somatic therapy rooms alike. Writing decades after that ancient Chinese text without necessarily setting out to echo it, she called the psoas the muscle of the soul, not as a scientific claim, but as an invitation to feel this deep, central muscle as something more than mechanical, a place where the pattern of your nervous system may be quietly written into tissue. Her work, and the wider body of yoga therapy that grew alongside it, is part of why so many hip-opening practices carry an emotional weight that surprises people the first time they feel it. A held hip stretch that suddenly brings unexpected tears is common enough in yoga studios to have its own informal name among teachers. And whatever the exact mechanism, it points toward the same territory this entire tradition keeps circling back to. Is every word of that claim proven in a laboratory? No. Somatic therapists themselves are careful to say this remains an evolving idea, not a settled fact. But the physical piece underneath it is not in question. Chronic tension in the psoas is real, measurable, and extremely common. And according to physical therapists who work with it daily, it does not come from where most people assume. There is also a slower, quieter cost to carrying this tension for years. A chronically shortened psoas pulls the front of the pelvis downward and forward, a pattern physical therapists call anterior pelvic tilt. Over time, this compresses the lower spine, alters the angle of the hips, and changes the way a person walks. A shorter stride, a slight forward lean, weight carried differently through the legs, more effort spent simply staying upright. Some of the stooped, shuffling posture, often blamed simply on growing older, may, in part, be decades of an unreleased psoas quietly rewriting the way a body stands and moves. It is rarely one dramatic event. It is thousands of ordinary days, sitting, bracing, holding, each one asking a little less length of a muscle that was built to move freely through its full range. Here is the counterintuitive part. Most advice about the hips and the core points in one direction: engage, tighten your abdominals, strengthen your hip flexors, do another round of crunches. For a muscle that is already chronically short and overworked, this is close to the opposite of what it needs. The psoas shortens in two very ordinary ways. The first is simply sitting, hours at a desk, in a car, on a couch, with the hip permanently folded and the muscle never asked to fully lengthen. The second is stress itself, held in the body long after the triggering moment has passed. The same protective curl from the startle reflex quietly maintained day after day, without you ever noticing it happening. A muscle held short for years does not usually respond well to being asked to work harder. It tends to respond to being asked to let go. Physical therapists who specialize in the hip see this pattern constantly. A client arrives asking to strengthen a painful, weak core, and testing reveals the opposite problem entirely. A psoas so chronically contracted, it can no longer lengthen through its own full range, mistaken for weakness simply because it is exhausted. This is closer to what older, breath-centered movement traditions actually practiced. Long-held postures with the hips opening rather than closing. Supported back bends that lengthen the front of the body. Above all, stillness paired with slow, deep breathing, because the psoas and the diaphragm, the primary muscle of breath, are connected through the same continuous sheet of deep fascia running down the inside of the spine. When breath is shallow and fast, the psoas tends to stay braced along with it. When breath slows and deepens, the psoas is often one of the first places that can finally begin to soften. This may be the quiet secret underneath centuries of slow, breath-led practice. It was never only about flexibility. It may have been, at least in part, about giving this one deep muscle permission to finally stand down. So here is the practice. Small enough to do tonight before you sleep. Lie down on your back. Bend both knees and place your feet flat on the floor, hip width apart, close enough that your legs can rest there without any effort. Let your arms fall slightly away from your sides, palms open toward the ceiling. This shape has a name in several movement traditions: constructive rest, and it does one simple thing extremely well. It removes every reason your psoas has to hold on. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable. Let your lower back soften down toward the floor, rather than arching away from it. Breathe slowly, low into your belly, and notice the gentle rise and fall at your center with every breath you take. Stay here for 5 to 10 minutes. Nothing to fix, nothing to strengthen, just this, your full weight given over to the floor and a muscle that has been holding on, quietly invited to rest. If your mind wanders toward whatever the day carried, a hard conversation, a small fright, a moment your body braced against without asking your permission, let it pass through without chasing it. You are not trying to relive anything. You are simply lying still long enough for a very old, very tired muscle to notice that, for this moment at least, nothing is coming. This is not a substitute for trauma therapy, and it will not undo years of tension in a single evening. But it is a beginning, a small physical sentence spoken nightly to a part of you that has been guarding something for a very long time. If you feel emotions surface while you rest here, that is not a malfunction. It is simply what release sometimes feels like. Moving through a body that has been asked to be still for once, without a reason to defend itself. You have a muscle that remembers fear. Somewhere deep in your hips, it has been carrying that memory quietly for longer than you know. Tonight, for just a few quiet minutes, you can let it remember something else instead. That for now, it is safe to lay it down.